And Ziyanda, I imagine part of the questions to be asked today is, are we expecting anything new to be said in court today, especially on the part of the former president's team?
Not quite, Ziyanda. In fact, one can say that we can expect almost a rehashing of, the arguments that have previously been made. Only then, the only difference, I suppose, would be to say that, look, Judge Pitkun, we don't agree with your decision. Grant us leave to appeal and take this matter up because we think that you've erred in not extending the scope of your understanding of the title to prosecute. But also, really and truly speaking, this trial cannot get underway until we believe that the correct and non-biased and unbiased, an impartial prosecutor takes the lead in this matter. But to talk more about this is Mpumelelo Zikalala. He's a legal expert, and I suppose, one of the biggest questions this morning is whether or not, this is a further kicking the can down the road by the former president.
Well, it depends on how you look at it. The former president would say, I need to protect my rights at all costs. Section 35 also applies to me. I think that the conduct of the prosecutor in this case, in inverted commas, is unbecoming, and I can't be prosecuted by someone who is engaged in this type of facts. Now, the NPA will then say, we want to start the process as soon as possible. So let bygones be bygones, and let's continue with this particular matter. But another process that you can look at is to say, on both parties, if sanity can prevail, and say, if Advocate Billy Down is removed as a lead prosecutor, it does not mean that he can't be part of the team. You simply removed the cause of the issue of the complaint of the other side, and the matter simply continues. His intellectual knowledge or capacity or information that he has built over the years while prosecuting this case, and also the case of Mr. Shabir Sheikh, which is closely linked to this one, is still there. You can still have access to him. It's just that he's not the person who's going to be doing those legal arguments. So why don't you remove him and then continue? At least you've deposed half of the cause of complaint in which the former president has. So that at the end of the day, you're able to make sure that this matter will start and end within a short amount of time. Of concern is the following. The quality and the quantity of the evidence is basically for concern. People are not going to live forever. Some of them may pass on. Documentary evidence may get lost, which is going to affect the evidentiary stage of these particular proceedings at a later stage. For both parties, by the way. Because at the end of the day, both parties still need to prove to the judge. From the side of the former president, he will say, I'm innocent, I haven't done anything wrong. From the side of the state, there's a bit of a heavier burden of saying, prove beyond reasonable doubt that indeed this person is guilty. Now, if you don't have the evidence to prove that, you may have a problem.
I mean, one of the issues that we're expecting Advocate Dalimpofu, who's representing the former president, to raise is even on a procedural aspect. They're saying that, well, it's actually unusual, it's not common to have a responding affidavit for an application for leave to appeal. Is this true? Is it really something that is procedurally incorrect, if I could put it that way?
You wouldn't say it to the strictest sense. Let's remember the nature of the court that you are in. It has inherent jurisdiction, so it's not governed by any piece of legislation. What then does is that it is able to exercise its powers in addition to the Superior Courts Act of saying, this is how we are going to conduct these particular proceedings. Of most importance is that of justice, let's say natural justice. Let's give each of the parties ample opportunity to respond and to raise allegations that they might have. But all that I want as a presiding officer is to get all the submissions from the relevant parties, make sure that I'm able to apply my mind, and they're able to direct me to the perfect legal prescripts, whether it's legislation or common law, or other cases that have been decided before. If you have covered those core functions, yes, you may say we haven't really stuck to the rule book as we know it, or the procedure as we know it, but at the end of the day, we've been able to achieve the justice factor. So it's important for us to continue and hear these matters as soon as possible, so that you're also able to expedite the matter and able to finish it and move on to the main trial.
Is it a fair argument for the NPA to make, to say, well, this court should not grant the former president leave to appeal. One, because they believe that it won't have reasonable prospects of success, but two, and which is taking me to my question, they're arguing that he should only appeal this once he's been convicted and sentenced. How does that work?
That is basically governed by, I think, Section 319 of the Criminal Procedure Act. The words which are written there, they are quite a bit silent, or they may be confusing and do not give a clear direction as to when exactly leave to appeal can be granted. If you take another scenario in which I've made an application for a judge or a magistrate to be removed as a presiding officer, I'm able to appeal that to a higher court, so that once the trial starts, there's no mistrials which are going to take place. Everything is going to move on smoothly. So in this one, if you look at the nature of the relief which is being sought by the former president, if it is granted, it brings about final relief in that you can't really prosecute him after that particular application has been granted in his favor. So in its nature, it does have a final relief sort of form, and if it does, then the SCA, if you haven't been successful in making that application within this particular court, is probably the most appropriate place to go to. If you look at the case of Porridge and how it got to the SCA, mostly similar circumstances would have arrived, but let's also look at the nature and the importance of this particular legal principle. It needs to be resolved somewhere, somehow. So at the end of the day, it's in the best interest of all parties to say, let's rather accept a delay of 1 or 2 years while this matter goes up to the SCA and Concord, than to have a whole year of legal principles and evidence being presented, only to find that at a later stage we're doing something which was wrong. So at the end of the day, it may be in the best interest for this matter to be settled once and for all by the Concord. And in order to do that, let this particular application go through to the SCA, and probably it's going to go to the Concord and then come back with the final decision.
Which would mean, of course, then that the trial date, which has been set for the 11th of April, is unlikely then to be fulfilled and honored, which is when this matter was expected to see evidence being led and the first witness taking the stand. But an important suggestion there being made by Mpumelelo Ziyanda that perhaps then one of the solutions that both legal teams could find and meet each other halfway is to say, fine, then remove Billy Down as the lead prosecutor, but keep him in the team, because of course he's got institutional memory of this matter and that of Shabir Sheikh, which is intrinsically linked to this particular matter. But let's see then today, Michelle and Ziyanda, whether or not there will be some kind of common ground, remembering that the interests of justice are something that the former president has consistently raised, that he wants a speedy and fair trial to get underway.
Absolutely. That's Ziyanda Ngcobo for a sense of what's likely to unfold inside of court. Outside of court, Zuma supporters have lashed out at the current leadership of the ANC, accusing it of draining funds that would have assisted in bringing people to the court itself today ahead of the appearance. Nkosikhona Duma is outside court watching this leg of the story for us. And Nkosikhona, I imagine plenty else being said. What else are you hearing?
Well, Ziyanda, I will tell you that what you are seeing outside court, this particular court appearance, ahead of former President Jacob Zuma's court appearance, is scenes that I would argue, are not consistent with what we've seen before, because there's certainly lesser number of people that have come here and gathered. We spoke to Carl Niehaus earlier on, who's of course one of the ardent supporters of former President Jacob Zuma, lashed out, of course, at the current leadership of the ANC. He's suggesting that they drain funding that would have assisted in bringing people here. We spoke to some of the supporters of former President Jacob Zuma, and they have started coming here. There is a group that is coming from Soweto. Very few of the people that have been here are coming from KwaZulu-Natal, but one of those who have come here is Mr. Nkosikhona Shezi. Mr. Shezi, what you are seeing here is even less security, less supporters, less big names that have usually accompanied former President Jacob Zuma, although his participation in today's proceedings has been confirmed. Why is that?
Well, part of my answer would be to say that it is still early hours for us to decide who's here, who's not here. But I must also say that I'm quite pleased with the number of comrades that are here who are gathered to support President Jacob Zuma, taking into consideration the fact that there were no buses organized, there were no funds allocated for for supporting President Jacob Zuma today, which is quite strange because you know that at some stage the KwaZulu-Natal leadership went to the NEC to ask for them to be permitted to support President Jacob Zuma, and therefore one would expect them to pay the bill for the buses, to bus people to come here and support President Jacob Zuma. Nonetheless, we are expecting to see quite a number of people. You would understand that this is an election year within the ANC, and there are people who are going around branches and regions claiming to be have visited President Jacob Zuma, or to be friends of President Jacob Zuma, and we are going to expect to see those people here today. And in fact, as leaders, we expect them not only to be here to show support by funding all the processes that need to be funded here.
Are you confident that his bid, of course, to remove lead state prosecutor in this matter, Mr. Billy Downer, removed from the case, is going to be successful here?
I am confident that what President Jacob Zuma is going to say today, in fact, his argument to remove Billy Downer from the prosecution is a legitimate one. It's a legal sound decision that he has taken. I am confident that he is on the correct side of the law. Whether the court does it or not, I cannot tell you what will happen, because we know the courts of this country, how they've treated President Jacob Zuma. There is a law for every citizen of this country. Then there is a Zuma law. You know, even the highest court in the land at one stage said they had to deviate from the normal procedures just to deal with the man, President Jacob Zuma. And therefore, I can tell you 100% that I am confident that what President Jacob Zuma is going to say here has a legal basis, it's legal sound, but whether the court is going to allow it or not, I cannot guarantee. Our judiciary is very compromised, my brother. There are allegations of 5 million bribe that was paid to a highest ranking judge, and it has never been investigated. You know, our judiciary has been exposed. In fact, there are allegations that sitting judges, their names appear on the corrupt CR17 bank statement, and that is sealed in the court of law. So whether President Jacob Zuma succeeds or not is another matter, but that does not necessarily mean that he is wrong.
Mr. Sheds, before we delve into issues that have obviously not been dealt with in court, such as the allegations you're making, surely you must be very concerned. You are saying that you expected the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal at least to provide funding for former President Jacob Zuma. Mr. Zuma remains a politician, and we know that politicians largely depend as well on a base, on a constituency. And what we're seeing here today should be concerning for you as one of the people who previously mobilized for former President Jacob Zuma. What is the plan then going forward? As you say, funding has been drained. We see less people coming out to support him today.
To tell you honestly, I'm not concerned about the number of people coming here. It does not necessarily translate to people having less support for President Jacob Zuma. I know that for supporters to come here, you know, largely President Jacob Zuma is supported in the main by ordinary working class, which constitutes a number of people who are not working, one unemployed. The Cyril Ramaphosa regime has put our country into unnecessary lockdowns and shed a lot of employment. People are unemployed. Businesses had to shut down. So our people are very under big constraint financially. And therefore, you see, I just want to warn people that you should never attempt to say that President Jacob Zuma has lost support, because that brings into the remembrance of what transpired last year in July, when we warned people that when you carry on to ill-treat President Jacob Zuma, subject him to illegal incarceration, people will react, and when people react, you will not like it. And indeed, that's what happened. And you know, our country was in turmoil, and unfortunately, the Phoenix thugs killed our people. And we should always guard against the narrative that President Jacob Zuma has lost support. President Jacob Zuma is the father of radical economic transformation. He is in the people's heart.
Mr. Shezi, thank you so much. Thank you so much. We are running out of time. Well, there was strong words coming out of Mr. Shezi. Of course, he's associated with the Radical Economic Transformation Champions, and you know, he's been saying as well, issuing strong words against the current leadership of the ANC, particularly President Cyril Ramaphosa, and that's been a consistent theme with supporters of former President Jacob Zuma, is that they seem to be attacking, of course, the current leadership of the ANC. He's suggesting, of course, that the former president still retains support, although these are the particular scenes that we are seeing here today. Certainly less people coming out to see Mr. Zuma today.